What if you could learn any skill quickly and reliably? What if you could combine different abilities like creativity, technology, communication, or strategy and use them together to solve problems, adapt, and stand out in a fast-changing world? For most of us, the world teaches that talent is something you're born with, or that you must pick one specialty and stick with it for life. But this approach leaves many people feeling stuck, unprepared, or left behind as things change. The truth is, learning is not a mystery, and skills are not magic tricks. Every skill is built from simple parts, and there are clear steps you can follow to get better at anything. This book is your guide to breaking through old limits. Inside, you'll discover how to learn faster, combine skills for greater results, and build confidence, even if you've never thought of yourself as a natural learner. You'll learn how to break big skills into smaller pieces, how to practice the parts that matter most, and how to make steady progress with every attempt. You'll also see how to connect skills from different areas, turning your past experiences into strengths for whatever you take on next. More than just tips or tricks, the Polymath Code gives you a complete system. You'll find simple tools to help you shift your mindset, plan your learning, and take action right away. You'll also learn how to focus on creating real results instead of getting stuck in endless studying or waiting to feel ready. If you've ever wished you could do more or worried that it's too late to start, this book is for you. The ability to learn and grow is not reserved for a lucky few. It's available to anyone willing to follow the steps and take the first action. You are not too late, and you are not stuck where you are. Let's get started. Your new life as a builder and lifelong learner begins now. Chapter 1. Enter the Code. Everything you have been told about talent is a convenient lie designed to keep you in your lane. You look at a virtuoso pianist, a polyglot speaking 6 languages, or a senior engineer architecting a massive system, and a quiet, defeatist voice in the back of your head whispers that they have something you do not. You tell yourself they were born with a special gift, a genetic lottery ticket that grants them access to a world you are forbidden to enter. You convince yourself that you are just not a math person, not a creative type, or simply not that smart. This belief is the single most dangerous virus in your operating system. It is the reason you are still watching from the sidelines, consuming content about success instead of building it. You are reading this because you suspect that the story you have been told is false. You feel a tension between the life you are living, defined by a single job title or a degree you earned a decade ago, and the life you actually want, where you are free to master whatever fascinates you. You are in the right place. By the end of this chapter, you will understand why you have felt stuck, and you will see the blueprint for breaking out of the single-lane trap. We are going to dismantle the myth of talent and replace it with a system that treats skills not as magic, but as code. The lie of the single lane. From the moment you entered the education system, you were groomed to be a specialist. You were told to pick a favorite subject, then a major, then a career path. The world loves specialists because they are easy to categorize and easy to employ. If you are an accountant, you go in the accountant box. If you are a writer, you go in the creative box. The problem arises when you try to leave the box. The moment you express interest in something outside your defined lane, you hit an invisible ceiling. You try to learn to code, but the first error message makes you feel stupid, so you retreat to your comfort zone. You try to learn a language, but the grammar feels impossible, so you tell yourself you are too old. You treat skills like locked rooms that require a specific key you were not born with. This single-lane identity is a cage. It feels safe because it is familiar, but it is slowly shrinking your world. When you define yourself strictly by what you already know, you become fragile. Industries change, tools evolve, artificial intelligence automates routine tasks. If your entire value is tied to a static skill set, you are one software update away from obsolescence. But the cost is not just economic, it is spiritual. There is a profound regret that compounds faster than interest in a savings account. It is the sting of watching someone else build the project you dreamed of, simply because they had the courage to learn the necessary tools while you were waiting for permission. It is the quiet tragedy of carrying your potential into your 40s, 50s, and 60s, never knowing what you could have built if you had just ignored the label society slapped on you. The passive consumer trap. Most people try to solve this dissatisfaction by consuming. You might be one of them. You watch endless tutorials on YouTube, listen to podcasts about high performers, and buy nonfiction books that pile up on your nightstand. You highlight sentences and take notes. You feel productive. You feel like you are learning. You are not learning. You are spiraling. This is the passive consumer spiral. It is a dopamine loop that tricks your brain into thinking you are making progress when you are actually standing still. Watching a master chef cook does not make you a chef. It makes you a spectator. Reading about the habits of billionaires does not increase your net worth. The gap between watching and doing is where dreams go to die. Passive learning feeds the illusion of competence. You understand the theory, so you think you can execute. But the moment you try to do the thing yourself, write the code, paint the canvas, negotiate the deal, you fail. And because you have not trained yourself to handle failure, you interpret that struggle as a lack of talent. You go back to watching videos because it feels safe. To break this cycle, you must stop acting like a consumer and start acting like a builder. You must stop waiting for the perfect time, the perfect teacher, or the perfect mood. You need a new operating system that forces you to engage with reality, make mistakes, and correct them. Decoding the matrix of mastery. Here is the truth that the talent myth hides. Skills behave exactly like computer code. They are not mystical traits bestowed by the gods. They are patterns, rules, and sequences. Every skill, no matter how complex it appears from the outside, is a system of inputs, processes, and outputs. Intelligence is not a fixed score on an IQ test. It is a set of trainable processes: attention control, working memory, pattern detection, and error correction. Think of a skill you want to master. Maybe it is public speaking. To the uninitiated, a great speaker looks like they are performing magic. They are charismatic, funny, and compelling. But if you look at public speaking through the lens of the Polymath Code, you stop seeing magic and start seeing syntax. You see the structure of their opening hook. You see the cadence of their pauses. You see the way they anchor their body language. These are not personality traits. They are subroutines. When you understand that skills are just code, you stop asking, "Am I talented enough?" and start asking, "What is the sequence?" This shift in perspective is the foundation of everything we will do together. Once you realize that mastery is a process of reverse engineering, the fear of the unknown evaporates. You realize that you can install a new skill just like you install an app. It might be buggy at first, it might crash, but you can debug it, you can optimize it, and eventually you can run it in the background while you install the next one. Building your unfair advantage. Imagine for a moment what happens when you actually apply this. You stop being a person who wishes they could do things and become a person who systematically acquires capabilities. The first time you go through this process, you will define a clear target. You will identify one concrete skill, not a vague wish, but a specific ability, and you will set a realistic horizon of 4 to 8 weeks. You will build a personal playbook, outlining the sub-skills and the practice rhythm. And then, you will experience a small but undeniable win. You will ship a tiny project. You will have video evidence, a screenshot, or a physical object that proves you moved from 0 to 1. That first win changes everything. It proves that your brain is not fixed. Over time, this becomes a compounding stack. Instead of repeating the same year of experience 20 times, you add new layers every year. You combine skills in ways that make you rare. A designer is common. A designer who understands psychology and data analytics is a unicorn. An engineer is common. An engineer who can write persuasive copy and speak in public is a leader. This is how you upgrade your career and income ceiling. You stop competing in crowded lanes where everyone has the same resume. You negotiate from strength because you bring a combination of capabilities that is impossible to automate and expensive to replace. You gain the creative freedom to start side projects, launch businesses, or solve personal problems without waiting for an expert to save you. You design a life where you are the main builder, not a permanent spectator. The architecture of a polymath. To get there, we cannot just rely on willpower. Willpower is a battery that runs out. We need an architecture. We need a system that pulls you forward even when you are tired. This book is structured to install that system layer by layer. We will not just throw random tactics at you. We are going to build a machine. It starts with the polymath identity. Before you can learn a new technique, you must rewrite the story of who you are. If you subconsciously believe you are a slow learner, no amount of studying will help you. We have to evict the old identity and install a new one that thrives on uncertainty. Once the identity is set, we install the meta-learning engine. This is your process for learning how to learn. You will stop diving into fields blindly and start mapping the terrain before you march. You will learn to scan a field, identify the bottlenecks, and design a practice loop that actually works. Then we move to skill deconstruction. You will learn to take a terrifyingly complex skill and slice it into micro skills that you can practice in 10-minute drills. You will learn to isolate the signal from the noise. We will unlock transfer power, teaching you how to reuse your existing skills to accelerate new ones. You will see how your past is not baggage, but ammunition. We will strip reality down with first principles, giving you the tools to think for yourself rather than copying others. We will ignite your creativity with crossfield thinking, turning your brain into a collision space for ideas. And finally, we will force you into output-first mode, where you learn by creating, not by consuming. We do this in a specific order for a reason. Identity precedes technique. If you do not change who you think you are, you will not sustain the habits. The engine precedes tactics. If you do not have a process, the best tips in the world will not save you, and the long game precedes perfection. We are building a lifelong structure, not looking for a quick fix. Pick your side. Ultimately, this comes down to a choice you have to make every single day. There are two attitudes you can take toward the problem of skill. The loser's attitude is to use talent as an excuse to never start. They look at a challenge and say, "I wasn't born with that." They quit the moment they feel confused. They blame their teachers, their tools, or their circumstances. They protect their ego by pretending they never cared in the first place. The winner's attitude is different. Winners believe that any skill is trainable with time, feedback, and effort. When they feel confused, they do not panic. They see it as a green light that signals they are about to grow. They treat failure as data, not as a verdict on their worth. They know that "I can't do this" really just means "I haven't learned the code for this yet." You have to decide which side you are on. You cannot be a tourist in your own life anymore. You cannot sit in the stands and critique the players. You have to get on the field. The glitch in your system. You now understand the stakes. You see the trap of the single lane and the potential of the polymath life. You likely feel a surge of motivation, a desire to grab a new skill and start running. But here's the catch. Motivation is cheap. You have probably felt this way before, at the start of a new year or after watching an inspiring movie, and yet nothing changed. You reverted to your old patterns within a week. Why? Because there is a hidden mechanism in your brain that actively fights against change. It is a psychological firewall designed to keep your current reality intact. Even with the best learning techniques in the world, this firewall will block your progress if you do not disable it first. It is the reason you self-sabotage right when you start making progress. It is the reason you feel like a fraud when you try something new. Before we can write any new code, we have to hack the operating system itself. We have to address the invisible script that dictates what you are allowed to do and who you are allowed to be. If we skip this step, everything else I teach you will fail. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Polymath Identity. You are standing in front of a door. Behind it lies the skill you desperately want to master, whether it is coding, painting, public speaking, or data science. You have the key in your hand. You have the tutorials, the books, and the time. But for some reason, you cannot turn the lock. You hesitate. You fumble. Eventually, you walk away, telling yourself that the lock is jammed or that you just do not have the strength to open it. The problem is not the lock. The problem is that you do not believe you are the kind of person who is allowed to walk through that door. This is the invisible wall that stops more people than lack of intelligence ever could. It is the identity glitch we hinted at in the previous chapter. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if your internal identity is set to single-lane specialist or struggling student, your brain will actively sabotage your efforts to change. It will view your attempts to learn as a violation of your character, creating friction, anxiety, and eventually surrender. In this chapter, we are going to rip out that old identity and install a new one. We are going to replace the story of "I am just an accountant" or "I am not creative" with a far more powerful narrative, the polymath identity. This is not about positive thinking or staring in the mirror and lying to yourself. It is about constructing a psychological framework that makes learning difficult things feel normal, safe, and inevitable. The bottleneck above all bottlenecks. Identity drives every learning decision you make. It is the operating system that runs beneath your conscious thoughts. If you believe you are bad with numbers, your brain will treat a difficult math problem as a threat. It will trigger a stress response, shutting down the very parts of your brain you need to solve the problem. You will feel a wash of panic. You will quit, and you will say, "See, I knew I was bad at this." You have just used a failure to reinforce the identity that caused the failure. This is why techniques fail when they conflict with your self-image. You can buy the most expensive camera gear, but if you identify as someone who isn't artistic, you will feel like a fraud every time you pick it up. You will feel exposed. Your identity determines what you tolerate. If you have a weak learning identity, you interpret confusion as proof of stupidity. You tolerate zero discomfort. The moment things get awkward, and learning is always awkward at first, you bail out to protect your ego. However, if you possess a polymath identity, your relationship with failure changes completely. You do not see confusion as a stop sign. You see it as the sensation of growth. You understand that feeling stupid is just the price of entry for becoming smart. A strong identity makes awkwardness feel normal. It allows you to stay in the pocket of discomfort long enough for the breakthrough to happen. Consider the long-term trajectory of these two mindsets. A single-lane identity shrinks your world. You cling to what you already know because that is where you feel safe. As the world changes, you become defensive, protecting your narrow turf. A polymath identity, on the other hand, keeps doors open. It allows you to walk into a room where you know nothing and feel excited rather than threatened. Who you think you are is the master skill. If we do not rewrite this, nothing else matters. From static labels to dynamic capabilities. The first step in this rewrite is to stop introducing yourself by your job title. When you say, "I am a lawyer," or "I am a teacher," you are trapping yourself in a box. You are confusing what you do with who you are. Job titles are temporary containers. They describe how you currently exchange value for money, but they do not define your potential. We need to shift your language from labels to capabilities. Instead of defining yourself by a static role, you must start defining yourself as a person who builds skills. This is a subtle but profound shift. A writer feels threatened by AI. A person who builds skills sees AI as just another tool to master. You need to craft a polymath story that you actually believe. Look back at your past. You have likely told yourself a story about how you ended up where you are, and it probably involves a lot of luck or circumstance. You need to edit that script. Find the moments where you learned something hard. Maybe you learned to drive. Maybe you figured out a complex video game. Maybe you navigated a new city. Reframe your past failures not as proof of limitation, but as training data. You are testing boundaries. You are gathering information. This leads to living in learner mode daily. Most people go through their day in defense mode, trying to hide what they do not know. You are going to flip that switch. When you encounter a problem you cannot solve, instead of getting frustrated, ask, "What can I learn here?" Treat everyday annoyances as training grounds. If your computer breaks, do not just call tech support. Try to understand the error. If you are stuck in traffic, observe the flow patterns. Make curiosity your default response. This daily practice reinforces the new identity until it hardens into reality. Dismantling the specialist myths. To fully install this new identity, we have to delete some corrupted files from your current system. Society has bombarded you with myths about specialization that simply are not true. The first myth is that you must pick one thing forever. We are told that if we do not specialize, we will fall behind. This creates a paralyzing fear of choosing the wrong path. But the truth is that most modern careers already require multiple skills. A great product manager needs to understand code, design, psychology, and business. A great architect needs engineering, art, and history. The myth of the one true calling is a lie. You do not have to pick one thing. You just have to pick one thing at a time. We operate in seasons of focus, not lifetimes of monotony. The second myth is that polymaths are born, not made. We look at historical figures like Da Vinci or modern icons like Elon Musk and assume they have a special brain structure. We ignore the thousands of hours of compound practice that went into their skill stacks. Modern polymaths are not mutants. They are people who built their skill stacks deliberately. They chose breadth plus depth. They refused to let others define their limits. The third and most persistent myth is that having many interests makes you mediocre at everything. You have heard the phrase, "jack of all trades, master of none." But that is a misquote. The full phrase is often cited as, "a jack of all trades is a master of none," but oftentimes better than a master of one. In a complex, interconnected world, the person who can connect the dots between two fields often outperforms the person who only knows one dot deeply. Sequencing and stacking skills create a unique form of excellence that a specialist can never touch. The Polymath Declaration. Now we move from theory to action. You cannot just think your way into a new identity, you have to act your way into it. The most powerful tool for this is the Polymath Declaration. You are going to write a short statement that defines who you are becoming. Notice I said who you are becoming, not who you are. The brain detects lies. If you sit on the couch and say, "I am a world-class athlete," your brain will reject it. But if you say, "I am becoming the kind of person who trains every day," your brain can accept that. Draft a statement that captures your new identity as a multi-skill builder. It might sound like this: "I am a builder of skills. I do not shy away from confusion. I run toward it. I am not defined by my past labels, but by my future capabilities. I learn, I adapt, and I create." You must read this out loud. It sounds cheesy. Do it anyway. You are rehearsing a new role. You are signaling to your nervous system that the rules of engagement have changed. But words are not enough. You need evidence. Your brain is a skeptical lawyer. It needs proof before it believes the new story. You must collect evidence for your new identity. Start a list of micro wins. Did you practice for 20 minutes today? Write it down. Did you ask a question instead of nodding along when you were confused? Write it down. Store these wins in a visible place. This is your case file. When the old voice whispers that you are a fraud, you point to the evidence and say, "The data says otherwise." Finally, you must act as if you are already this person. When you face a decision, ask yourself, what would a polymath do in this situation? Would they scroll social media, or would they read a chapter of a difficult book? Would they hide from a challenge, or would they volunteer for it? Make one decision every day that aligns with this new avatar. Action reinforces identity, which makes further action easier. It is a positive feedback loop. Hacking your reality. To support this internal shift, you need to alter your external reality. Use environmental cues to keep your new identity front and center. If you are learning to paint, do not hide your brushes in a drawer. leave them on your desk. If you are learning to code, keep your terminal open. Put your practice schedule where you see it 10 times a day. These are visual anchors that remind you of who you are. You must also audit the people around you. Identity is contagious. If you spend all your time with people who complain about their jobs and refuse to learn new things, you will drift back to their level. You need to find identity-aligned people. Spend time around learners, creators, and builders. Join a community where multi-skill learning is the norm. You need to see that this behavior is possible. Language is your final lever. Catch yourself when you use fixed phrases like, "I can't do this," or "I'm bad at this." These are commands you are giving to your subconscious. Correct them in real time. Replace them with process phrases. "I can't do this" becomes, "I haven't learned this yet." "I'm bad at this" becomes, "I am currently practicing this." Speak about your skills as active projects, not static traits. The transformation. When you commit to this process, 3 things will happen. First, you will achieve the good outcome, identity neutralization. You will stop insulting yourself. The negative chatter will quiet down. You will feel less emotional charge when you try something new. You will start experiments without overthinking whether you are allowed to be there. Then, you will reach the excellent outcome, identity upgrade. You will naturally describe yourself as someone who learns. You will regularly start projects in new domains. People will start telling you that you seem like a fast learner, not realizing that you simply stop blocking your own path. Finally, you may reach the best outcome, identity radiation. You become the go-to person for figuring things out. You inspire the people around you to break out of their own boxes. You build a reputation as a polymath who brings value across situations, solving problems that specialists cannot even see. The resistance. Be warned, this will not be a smooth ride. Your old identity will fight back. You will feel like a fake. You will read your declaration and feel a knot of resistance in your stomach. That is normal. Soften the language if you need to, but do not stop. You will also face social pushback. People who are invested in your old identity, your parents, your old friends, your coworkers, may tease you. They might say, "Since when are you into that?" Or, "Stick to what you know." Treat this criticism as confirmation. If you are not getting pushback, you are probably not changing enough. Find an ally who understands what you are doing and ignore the rest. And when stress hits, and it will, you will want to regress. You will want to crawl back into the warm, safe box of your old label. Prepare a failure script in advance. Decide now how a polymath responds to a bad day. They do not quit. They analyze the data and reset for tomorrow. You have now rewritten the story of who you are. You have the identity of a builder. You have the desire to learn and the belief that you can. But belief is not a method. Confidence is not competence. You are like a driver who has finally decided to get in the car and turn the key, fully believing you can reach the destination. But there is a problem. You still do not have a map. You do not know the roads, the shortcuts, or the traffic rules of the new worlds you want to enter. You have the will, but you lack the engine. In the next chapter, we're going to build the machine that turns your new identity into tangible, rapid progress. We're going to stop you from driving blind. Chapter 3, Meta Learning Engine. You have been there before. You decide to learn a new skill, perhaps a new software, a foreign language, or a musical instrument. You feel a rush of excitement. You buy a highly rated course, watch 3 hours of YouTube tutorials, and download a specialized app. You feel productive. You feel like you are on your way. Then, 3 weeks later, the app is unopened. The course is only 12% complete. The guitar is gathering dust in the corner. You tell yourself you got busy, or that the course was boring, or that you just do not have the discipline. But that is not what happened. You did not fail because you lacked discipline. You failed because you lacked a map. You tried to drive across a new continent without a GPS, taking random turns whenever you saw something interesting. Eventually, you got lost, ran out of gas, and abandoned the car. Most people approach learning as a passive activity. They wait for a teacher or a video to spoon-feed them information. They hope that if they just consume enough content, the skill will magically stick. This is the amateur approach. It is slow, painful, and prone to failure. In this chapter, we are going to build your meta-learning engine. This is the system that sits above the skill itself. It is the process of learning how to learn. Instead of diving into a subject blindly, you are going to learn how to act like an engineer of your own education. We will replace random flailing with a structured, repeatable attack plan that you can use for the rest of your life. The high cost of blind learning. When you jump into a new field without a plan, you pay a heavy tax on your time. You spend hours memorizing vocabulary that no one actually uses. You practice guitar chords that are rarely played. You learn coding syntax that was deprecated 5 years ago. This is the cost of blind learning. You are working hard, but you are working on low-impact tasks. A simple map, created before you even start practicing, can save you weeks of frustration. It allows you to distinguish between the essential 20% of the skill that gives you 80% of the results and the trivial details that you can ignore for now. Beyond saving time, a meta-learning system solves the biggest emotional barrier to starting, the anxiety of the unknown. When you say, "I don't know where to start," what you really mean is, "I am afraid I will waste my time." A structured process eliminates that fear. It turns the terrifying fog of a new domain into a predictable series of steps. You no longer need to rely on motivation because you have a procedure. This engine is an asset that compounds. The first time you use it, it will feel clunky. The second time, it will be faster. By the 10th time, you will be able to enter a completely foreign field, whether it is accounting, archery, or artificial intelligence, and feel an immediate sense of control. You will have a personal library of methods that work for you. You will not just be learning a skill, you will be refining the skill of learning itself. Mapping the territory. Before you march into battle, you must survey the terrain. This is the step that 99% of learners skip. They are so eager to start doing that they forget to look at where they are going. The core of the meta-learning engine is the field scan. This is not a deep dive. It is a rapid, high-level reconnaissance mission. You are not trying to learn the skill yet. You are trying to understand the structure of the skill. You want to know the major concepts, the common pitfalls, and the typical progression path. You are looking for the unknown unknowns, the things you do not even know that you do not know. During this scan, you are also hunting for bottlenecks. Every skill has a specific point where beginners usually get stuck and quit. In language learning, it might be the grammar rules or the fear of speaking. In programming, it might be setting up the development environment. In sports, it might be a specific physical coordination. If you can identify the bottleneck before you start, you can design your practice to crush it. If you know that most people quit the guitar because their fingers hurt, you can plan for that pain and adjust your practice schedule to manage it. You are no longer blindsided by difficulty, you are expecting it. This process allows you to build a personal learning template. This is your default approach. It is a simple script that says, "When I learn something new, I always do A, then B, then C." You stop reinventing the wheel every time you get curious about a new topic. The grinding trap. There is a pervasive myth in our culture that the secret to mastery is simply to grind. We are told that if we just work hard enough and put in the hours, we will succeed. This is a dangerous half-truth. Grinding on the wrong things is not grit, it is stupidity. If you practice a tennis serve with bad form for 1,000 hours, you have not mastered the serve. You have mastered a bad habit that will take another 1,000 hours to unlearn. The just grind mentality leads to burnout because it prioritizes effort over strategy. We are replacing just grind with scan, then grind smart. Another myth is the search for the perfect resource. You have likely spent hours reading reviews of courses, trying to find the best one. You tell yourself you are researching, but you are actually procrastinating. The truth is that most decent resources are good enough if your learning engine is sound. A great learner can learn from a mediocre book, but a bad learner will fail even with a world-class mentor. Stop looking for a magic pill and start building a magic machine. Finally, do not fall for the trap of thinking every field is totally unique. While the content differs, the patterns of learning repeat. Every skill has a vocabulary. Every skill has a syntax. Every skill requires feedback loops. Once you recognize these recurring elements, you can reuse your engine. You do not need to build a new car for every road you drive on. Building your engine. Now we get to the practical application. How do you actually build this engine? It starts with a strict time limit. Give yourself exactly 1 hour to do a field scan. Set a timer. In that hour, search for how to learn X, common mistakes in X, and best resources for X. Look for breakdowns of the skill. Skim through the table of contents of the top 3 books on the subject. Watch a few videos that explain the big picture. Your goal is to fill out a skill brief, a 1-page document that lists the key subskills, the jargon you need to learn, and the resources you will use. When the timer goes off, you stop researching and you start planning. Next, you must define your minimum viable mastery. Most people set goals that are too vague, like, I want to learn Spanish. That is a recipe for failure because there is no finish line. Instead, ask yourself, what does good enough look like in 4 to 8 weeks? Maybe it means having a 5-minute conversation with a native speaker. Maybe it means building a simple 1-page website. Maybe it means playing 3 songs around a campfire. This is your target. It is not your final destiny, but it is a concrete milestone that proves you can function in this new domain. Once you have a target, you design a simple practice loop. Decide on a frequency you can actually maintain. 3 short sessions a week are infinitely better than 1 marathon session that never happens. Decide exactly what you will do during those sessions. Will you use flashcards? Will you write code? Will you record yourself speaking? And most importantly, decide how you will measure progress. If you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. Optimizing the machine. To keep this engine running smoothly, you need a few maintenance protocols. The first is to keep a learning playbook. This is a single document where you store your skill briefs, your practice plans, and your notes. It becomes your personal user manual. Over time, you will look back at this document and see patterns. You will realize that you learn best in the mornings, or that you struggle with visual concepts but excel at logical ones. This self-knowledge is gold. You should also implement a short debrief after every practice session. This does not need to be a journal entry. Just write 3 quick lines. What worked? What didn't? What will I change next time? This takes less than 5 minutes, but it closes the feedback loop. It prevents you from making the same mistake for a month straight. Finally, you need to understand the balance between exploration and exploitation. This is a concept from computer science. When you start a new skill, you should be in exploration mode. Sample different methods. Try a video, try a book, try an app. But after a short period, you must switch to exploitation mode. Pick the one method that worked best and commit to it fully for a sprint of 2 to 4 weeks. Do not switch methods in the middle of a sprint just because it gets hard. The speed of trust. When you install this engine, the results are predictable. A good outcome is that you simply have a plan. You no longer wake up wondering what you should study. You have a field scan and a practice loop. You reflect briefly after your sessions. You are no longer winging it. An excellent outcome is that you notice your time to competence dropping. You realize that what used to take you 6 months now takes you 6 weeks. You can explain your learning process to others. You are not just learning, you are optimizing. The best outcome is that this engine becomes a competitive advantage. In a world where technology changes every year, the ability to rapidly map and master a new tool is the ultimate superpower. You become the person who handles change with calm confidence. You actively seek out new challenges because you trust your engine to handle them. System failure modes. Even with a good engine, things can go wrong. You need to be aware of the common failure modes so you can spot them early. The first is overscanning. This is when you keep researching long after you know enough to start. You are reading your 10th article on the best guitar strings instead of playing the guitar. Remember the 1 hour rule. Imperfect action beats perfect planning every time. The second pitfall is underestimating difficulty. Every new skill has a dip, a period where the excitement wears off and the results haven't shown up yet. If you are not expecting this, you will think something is wrong with you. You will think you are not talented, but if you have mapped the terrain, you know the dip is coming. You can greet it like an old friend. The third failure mode is constantly switching methods. This is shiny object syndrome. You start a course, it gets hard, so you buy a different course. You are constantly restarting at level 1. This is why the exploitation phase is so critical. You must commit to a method long enough to see if it works. You now have a new identity and a powerful engine. You know who you are, and you know how to approach the unknown. You have a map, a compass, and a vehicle. But as you look at the map of the skill you want to master, you will notice something daunting. The territory is massive. Even with a plan, the sheer volume of things to learn, the thousands of words, the complex movements, the endless theories can feel crushing. How do you eat an elephant without choking? You do not eat it whole. You need a knife. You need a way to slice this massive, intimidating beast into pieces so small that you can digest them without thinking. In the next chapter, we're going to sharpen that knife. We're going to learn the art of breaking things down until they are no longer scary. Chapter 4, Skill Deconstruction. You are standing at the foot of a mountain. You look up, and the peak is hidden behind clouds. The path is steep, rocky, and terrifyingly long. This is exactly how it feels when you decide to learn a complex new skill. You look at learning German or mastering Python or becoming a public speaker as this massive, monolithic object. It feels heavy. It feels impossible. And because it feels impossible, you freeze. The reason you feel overwhelmed is not because the skill is too hard. It is because you are looking at the whole thing at once. You are trying to swallow the entire mountain in one bite. When you watch a master perform, whether it is a cellist playing a concerto or a negotiator closing a high-stakes deal, you are witnessing an illusion. It looks like one fluid, continuous act of genius, but it is not. It is a stack of hundreds of tiny, discrete actions executed in perfect sequence. The master has simply practiced these tiny actions so many times that the seams between them have disappeared. In this chapter, we are going to hand you a sledgehammer. We are going to shatter the illusion of the big skill. You are going to learn the art of skill deconstruction. We will stop looking at the mountain and start looking at the rocks. By the end of this chapter, you will never look at a complex ability the same way again. You will see it for what it really is, a collection of small, boring, manageable parts that you can conquer one by one. The anatomy of overwhelm. The biggest enemy of learning is not difficulty, it is ambiguity. When you tell yourself, I need to get better at coding, you have given your brain a command it cannot execute. It is too vague. There is no handle to grab onto. So you procrastinate. You watch another video. You dabble. Deconstruction solves this by replacing the vague with the specific. It takes a terrifying goal and slices it into pieces so small that failure becomes almost impossible. You are not learning to code. You are learning the syntax of a for loop. You are not learning to paint. You are learning how to mix a specific shade of green. This approach does something crucial for your motivation. It creates a game you can actually win today. If your goal is mastery, you will go to bed feeling like a failure every night for years. But if your goal is master this one specific transition, you can go to bed with a win. Furthermore, deconstruction allows you to apply the 80-20 rule. In any skill, roughly 20% of the sub-skills provide 80% of the value. If you try to learn everything at once, you waste time on the trivial 80%. By breaking the skill down, you can identify the high-value targets, the load-bearing walls of the skill, and attack them first. You stop practicing what is easy and start practicing what actually matters. Smashing the black box. Most people treat skills like a black box. They put effort in one side, hope for magic to happen in the middle, and expect results out the other side. They practice by simply doing the thing over and over again. If they want to get better at tennis, they just play matches. If they want to get better at writing, they just write full essays. This is the amateur's trap. Playing the whole game is a terrible way to learn the game. When you perform the full skill, there is too much noise. You cannot isolate what is going wrong. If you miss a shot in tennis, was it your footwork, your grip, your timing, your eye contact? If you are just playing the match, the moment passes too quickly to analyze. You bury your weak links inside the chaos of the performance. Deconstruction forces you to open the black box. You have to identify the components. There are visible components, the things an observer can see. In public speaking, this is your hand gestures, your volume, your eye contact. Then there are the invisible components, the things happening inside the performer's head. This is how they structure their thoughts, how they manage their anxiety, how they remember their lines. You need to map these out. You do not need a perfect academic diagram. You just need a list. You watch a master and ask, what exactly are they doing right now? Break it down until you have a pile of raw materials. These are your micro skills. The secret weapon of the pros. Once you have your pile of micro skills, you stop playing and start drilling. This is where the ego takes a hit. We like to feel competent. We like to play the song we already know because it sounds good. We like to run the code that already works. But comfort is the enemy of growth. High performers obsess over drills. They isolate the one measure of music that trips them up, and they play it 500 times. They do not play the rest of the song. They attack the bottleneck. This is called deliberate practice. It is not just repetition. It is targeted, uncomfortable repetition with immediate feedback. You must design drills for your micro skills. A drill is a short, focused exercise that targets one specific component. If you are learning a language, a drill might be conjugating 10 verbs in the past tense against a timer. It is not a conversation. It is a gym rep for your brain. These drills should be short. 2 to 10 minutes is often enough. The goal is intensity, not duration. You want to engage your brain fully, perform the micro skill, check if you did it right, and do it again. If you are not mentally exhausted after 20 minutes, you probably were not drilling. You were just hanging out. The myth of the natural. There is a persistent myth that if you were truly talented, you would not need to do this. We like to imagine that geniuses just wake up and perform. We think that breaking things down is cheating, or that it is something only slow learners have to do. This is nonsense. The more advanced the performer, the more granular their deconstruction. A novice golfer tries to hit the ball. A pro golfer thinks about the angle of their wrist at the top of the backswing. The natural is usually just someone who figured out how to deconstruct the skill intuitively at a young age. Do not let your ego prevent you from doing the work. If you feel silly repeating a single phrase of a speech in front of a mirror for 20 minutes, remind yourself that this is exactly how the best speakers in the world got there. They built the house brick by brick. You are just seeing the finished mansion. Mixing the medicine. Now, a warning. If you drill the same thing for too long, your brain goes to sleep. You enter autopilot. You might be repeating the motion, but you are no longer learning. To fix this, we use a technique called interleaving. Instead of doing one drill for an hour, block A, block A, block A, you mix them up, block A, block B, block C, block A. Imagine you are learning to cook. Instead of chopping onions for 3 hours straight, you chop an onion, then whisk an egg, then knead some dough, then go back to the onion. This forces your brain to constantly reload the program for each skill. It feels harder. It feels more confusing. You will feel like you are making slower progress because you cannot get into a rhythm. But the research is clear. This frustration is good. It creates stronger, more flexible neural pathways. When you block practice, you are relying on short-term memory. When you interleave, you are forcing long-term retrieval. You are training your brain to be ready for anything, which is exactly what the real world requires. How to slice the elephant. So how do you actually do this? You start by defining the end performance. What does success look like? Be concrete. I want to be able to give a 5-minute presentation without looking at my notes. Next, you list the micro skills. Watch a video of a great presenter. What are they doing? 1. They have a strong opening hook. 2. They use silence to create emphasis. 3. They move their hands to illustrate points. 4. They make eye contact with different parts of the room. 5. They recover smoothly when they stumble. Now create the drills. Write 3 different opening sentences. Record yourself saying them. Pick the best one. Do it 10 times. Read a paragraph of text, but force yourself to pause for 3 full seconds at every period. It will feel excruciatingly long. That is the point. Have a friend interrupt you randomly while you speak, and practice getting back on track without saying Finally, build your circuit. Do 5 minutes of drill 1, 5 minutes of drill 2, 5 minutes of drill 3. Then take a break. The trap of vague deconstruction. The most common mistake people make here is decomposing too vaguely. They list micro skills like be confident or be funny. You cannot drill be confident. That is an outcome, not an action. You must get granular. Be confident might actually mean stand with feet shoulder-width apart, keep chin parallel to the floor, and speak at a volume that reaches the back wall. These are physical actions. You can film them, you can measure them, you can fix them. Always ask yourself, could a camera see this? If the answer is no, your micro skill is too abstract. Break it down further until it becomes a physical or mental action you can control. Escaping the comfort zone. You will naturally gravitate toward the drills you are good at. If you are great at memorizing lines, but bad at eye contact, you will find yourself spending all your practice time on your script. It feels good to succeed. You must fight this urge. Label your drills. Mark them as comfort or stretch. Your practice session must include at least one stretch drill. This is the bottleneck. This is where the growth lives. If you are not struggling, you are not improving. You are just rehearsing your existing ability. Use timed microblocks to enforce this. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Commit to doing the hard thing, the thing you hate, for just those 10 minutes. You can do anything for 10 minutes. When the timer goes off, you are allowed to stop. This prevents the task from feeling endless and keeps your intensity high. The outcome of deconstruction. When you embrace this way of thinking, the world changes. You stop seeing talent and start seeing stacks. You look at a complex skill and your brain automatically starts taking it apart. Oh, he's doing X, then Y, then Z. You gain a sense of power. No skill is too big for you because you know how to use the knife. You can slice anything down to size. You become a mechanic of your own abilities, diagnosing the broken part and swapping it out rather than buying a whole new car. You will find that you progress faster than the people around you who are just trying hard. While they are banging their heads against the wall of the full performance, you are quietly upgrading your components one by one. And when you finally reassemble the parts, the result looks like magic to everyone else. But there is a lingering question. We have talked about breaking down new skills. We have talked about starting from scratch and building brick by brick. But you are not a blank slate. You have a history. You have a lifetime of experiences, hobbies, jobs, and obsessions. What if I told you that you have already learned half of the skill you want to master next? What if the new skill isn't actually new at all? Most people leave their past experiences at the door when they enter a new room. They think their background in music has nothing to do with coding, or that their time playing sports has nothing to do with negotiation. They are wrong. They are leaving their most powerful weapon in the hallway. In the next chapter, we are going to pick it up. We are going to learn how to cheat the system by stealing from yourself. Chapter 5, Transfer Power. Imagine you are playing a video game. You have spent hundreds of hours fighting through levels, earning weapons, upgrading your armor, and boosting your stats. You are powerful. You are confident. Then, you decide to play a sequel or a different game entirely. You boot it up, and suddenly, you are stripped naked. You are back to level 1. You have a wooden stick and 0 health. All that time you spent building yourself up feels gone, evaporated into the digital ether. This is how most people treat their lives. When they switch jobs, pick up a new hobby, or pivot their careers, they mentally hit the reset button. They walk into the new room with their hands up, apologizing for being a beginner. They say things like, "I don't know anything about this," or "I'm starting from scratch." This is a lie, and it is an expensive one. You are never starting from scratch. You are starting from experience. The tragedy is that most people leave their experience at the door because it does not look exactly like the new skill they are trying to learn. They think that because they were a musician, they know nothing about coding. They think that because they were a teacher, they know nothing about sales. In this chapter, we are going to stop this waste. We are going to unlock a capability that allows you to cheat the learning curve. It is the ability to take a hard-won lesson from one part of your life and drag and drop it into another. We call this transfer power, the illusion of the blank slate. The reason you feel like a beginner is that you are looking at the surface, not the structure. On the surface, playing the violin and writing a legal brief look completely different. One involves wood, strings, and sound. The other involves logic, precedent, and text. But if you look at the structure, the code underneath, they are remarkably similar. Both require the ability to recognize patterns. Both require a sense of rhythm and pacing. Both require you to construct an argument, musical or logical, that leads the audience to a specific emotional or intellectual conclusion. Both require hours of solitary, deliberate practice to refine the details. If you are a musician learning law and you tell yourself, "I am a beginner," you are throwing away your advantage. But if you tell yourself, "I am just learning a new instrument called the law, and I already know how to practice, how to perform, and how to listen," you are suddenly miles ahead of the student next to you who has never mastered anything. This is why transfer power is important. It prevents you from wasting years in the awkward phase. It allows you to use your past as leverage. When you treat every new skill as a totally isolated island, you are doomed to be a perpetual amateur. But when you build bridges between those islands, you create a continent of competence. Your invisible arsenal. To use this power, you first have to know what you actually own. Most people have a terrible accounting of their own skills. If I asked you what you are good at, you would probably list your job duties. "I can use Excel," or "I can drive a forklift." That is too narrow. You need to map your inventory based on capabilities, not tasks. Think about the things you have done. Maybe you played competitive sports in high school. You might think that is irrelevant to your current goal of learning graphic design. Look closer. Sports taught you how to take feedback without crying. It taught you how to visualize a result before it happens. It taught you how to manage your energy during a long performance. Those are not sports skills. Those are performance skills. They travel. Maybe you spent years waiting tables. You think that is just carrying plates. But in reality, you learned how to triage a crisis, how to read body language instantly, and how to prioritize 5 conflicting demands in real time. If you are now learning to be a project manager, you are not new. You have been managing chaotic projects for years. The stakes were just dinner orders instead of software deadlines. You must sit down and audit your life. List your technical skills, yes, but also list your soft skills. Listening, organizing, simplifying, calming people down. Group them into clusters. You will realize you are standing on a massive foundation that you have been ignoring. The art of the bridge. Once you see your inventory, you have to build the bridge. You have to explicitly tell your brain how to connect the old to the new. This does not happen automatically. You have to force the connection with what I call bridge statements. Let's say you are a writer trying to learn coding. You are staring at a screen full of Python script and feeling stupid. Stop. Look at your inventory. You know how to structure a story. You know that a story needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. You know that every character needs a motivation. Make the bridge statement. Writing code is just like writing a story. The variables are the characters. The functions are the plot points. The syntax is just grammar. Suddenly, the code is not alien anymore. It is just a different dialect of a language you already speak. You can use your writer brain to solve coding problems. You can ask, what is the narrative arc of this function? This works for everything. If you are a carpenter learning to trade stocks, use a bridge statement. The market is like wood. It has a grain. You have to work with the grain, not against it. You measure twice, cut once. These analogies might not be perfect, but they reduce the intimidation factor. They give you a handle to grab onto. They allow you to import your confidence from the old domain into the new one. The myth of the specialist. Society tells you that you must fully master one skill before you dare to touch another. It tells you that if you split your focus, you will be mediocre at everything. This is the specialist myth, and it is designed to produce cog-like workers who fit neatly into an org chart. The truth is that the most valuable people in the world are rarely the ones with the highest score in a single skill. They are the ones who have stacked multiple good enough skills to create something rare. Consider a person who is in the top 1% of programmers. They are brilliant, but they are competing with every other top-tier programmer. Now consider someone who is in the top 25% of programmers. Good, not great, but also in the top 25% of public speakers and the top 25% of designers. Individually, none of those skills are world-class, but combined, that person is a unicorn. They can build the prototype, design the pitch deck, and sell it to investors. They can do things the pure specialist cannot even imagine. This is the power of skill stacking. You do not need to be the best in the world at one thing. You just need to be competent in a combination of things that solves a valuable problem. Designing your stack. You should not just stack skills randomly. Learning to juggle while learning to do taxes might be fun, but it doesn't necessarily create leverage. You want to stack skills that amplify each other. Think of it in terms of anchor skills and amplifier skills. Your anchor skill is your main thing, the thing you do most of the time. Maybe it is writing. An amplifier skill is something that makes the anchor more valuable. For a writer, learning data analysis is a massive amplifier. Now you are not just writing opinions, you are writing data-driven insights. Learning design is an amplifier. Now your words look beautiful and are easier to read. Look at the polymaths you admire. Steve Jobs was not the world's best engineer, nor the world's best designer, nor the world's best marketer. But he was competent in all three, and he stacked them to create products that no pure engineer could build. You need to design your own stack. Ask yourself, what skill, if I added it to my current arsenal, would make me the only person who can do what I do? The danger of negative transfer. I need to warn you about a glitch in the system. Sometimes your past experience can actually hurt you. This is called negative transfer. It happens when a habit that was useful in the old domain is destructive in the new one. If you played badminton, you use a lot of wrist action. If you try to bring that wrist action into tennis, you will get injured. The mechanics look similar, but the rules of physics are different. If you are a military commander, you give orders and expect instant obedience. If you transfer that leadership style into a volunteer organization or a creative startup, you will destroy the culture. The command and control habit is a liability in a collaborate and create environment. You must be vigilant for this. When you are building your bridges, you also have to mark the hazards. You have to say, my experience helps me here, but I need to leave this specific habit at the door. The cheat code for life. When you master transfer power, you stop being afraid of change. You realize that you are never starting from zero. You are just deploying your existing forces to a new front. You start to see the world differently. You see the connections between architecture and software, between biology and economics, between painting and public speaking. You become a translator of the universe. You will achieve the good outcome. You stop feeling like an imposter. You walk into new challenges with a quiet confidence, knowing you have tools in your backpack that others don't see. You will achieve the excellent outcome. You design a coherent skill stack. You stop drifting from hobby to hobby and start building a portfolio of capabilities that make sense together. You become the person who does X plus Y. And you might reach the best outcome. Your stack becomes your signature. You solve problems in a way that is uniquely yours. You attract opportunities that are shaped like you. You are no longer competing with anyone because no one else has your specific combination of inputs. The missing piece. We have covered a lot. We have rewritten your identity. We have built a learning engine. We have deconstructed skills into manageable parts. And now, we have learned to transfer your past power into your future projects. You are becoming a formidable machine. You can learn fast, you can learn deep, and you can connect the dots. But there is a vulnerability in this system. Everything we've discussed so far relies on existing maps. We have talked about scanning the field, finding the best practices, and copying the masters. We have talked about using analogies to bridge what you know to what is already known by others. But what happens when the map is wrong? What happens when you enter a field where the best practices are outdated? What happens when the experts are just repeating what they heard from other experts and everyone is marching off a cliff? What happens when you want to do something that has never been done before? In those moments, analogies will fail you. Copying will fail you. You cannot rely on the surface-level patterns anymore. You need to dig deeper. You need to go down to the bedrock of reality and understand the physics of the problem itself. You need a way to think that does not depend on what other people say is true. You need to learn how to tear the world apart and rebuild it from the ground up, using nothing but the raw truth. In the next chapter, we are going to learn the most difficult and powerful thinking tool in existence. We are going to learn how to think like a physicist in a world of copycats. Chapter 6, First Principles. You are standing in a room that is pitch black. You have been given a map by an expert, a guru who has navigated this room 1,000 times. The map says, walk 10 steps forward, turn left, and walk 5 steps. You follow the instructions perfectly. You walk 10 steps, you turn left, you take 1 step and smash your face into a concrete pillar. You are bleeding, you are confused, you followed the instructions, you did exactly what the expert said. Why did you fail? You failed because you were following a script, but the room had changed. Maybe a wall was moved. Maybe the expert was taller than you and their stride was longer. Maybe the expert lied. This is the danger of learning by analogy or learning by copying. Most of the world operates on a copy-paste basis. We look at what successful people do and we try to mimic their surface-level behaviors. We buy the same notebooks, use the same software, and follow the same morning routines. We treat success like a recipe. But reality is not a recipe. Reality is a chaotic, shifting environment where variables change constantly. When you rely on other people's tactics, you are fragile. The moment the context shifts, the market crashes, the software updates, the algorithm changes, your script becomes useless. You are left standing in the dark with a map that no longer matches the territory. In this chapter, we are going to teach you how to throw away the map and turn on the lights. We are going to explore first principles thinking. This is the mental discipline of stripping a problem down to its atomic truths and rebuilding a solution from the ground up. It is the difference between being a cook who follows a recipe and a chemist who understands how heat changes molecules. One is dependent, the other is free. The fragility of the playbook. The modern world is obsessed with hacks. We want the 3 steps to perfect productivity, the 5 secrets to negotiation, the template for the viral post. We crave these things because they save energy. Thinking is metabolically expensive. It is much easier to let someone else do the thinking and just buy their conclusions. But there is a hidden cost to this intellectual laziness. When you adopt a tactic without understanding the principle behind it, you are building your house on sand. Tactics are situational. They work in a specific context at a specific time for a specific person. Principles are universal. They work everywhere, always. If you learn a specific sales script, a tactic, you will be paralyzed when a customer asks a question that isn't on the sheet. But if you understand human psychology and the concept of value exchange principles, you can invent a new script on the fly. First principles thinking makes you adaptable. It allows you to improvise. When you understand the physics of a skill, you don't need to memorize the manual. You can look at a problem, identify the constraints, and engineer a solution that might look nothing like what came before. This is how industries are disrupted. It is not by people who followed the rules better. It is by people who looked at the rules, asked, is this actually a law of physics or just a habit? And realized they could break them. Excavating the truth. So, what does this actually look like? It looks like a demolition project. To think from first principles, you must become aggressively skeptical of your own assumptions. Every time you approach a skill, you bring a suitcase full of truths that are actually just beliefs. I need a degree to do this. I need expensive equipment to start. This takes 10 years to master. It has to be done this way because that is how it has always been done. First principles thinking requires you to take a sledgehammer to these statements. You have to ask the most annoying question in the world, why? And when you get an answer, you ask why again. You keep drilling down until you hit bedrock, the fundamental truth that cannot be reduced any further. Let's say you want to write a book, but you believe you can't because you don't have a publisher. Why do you need a publisher? To get distribution. Why do you need distribution? To get the book to readers. Is a publisher the only way to get a book to readers? No, the internet exists. Files can be uploaded. So the fundamental truth is not I need a publisher. The fundamental truth is I need a text file and a way for people to download it. Everything else, the agents, the printing presses, the bookstores, is just one method of solving the problem, not the problem itself. By stripping away the publisher assumption, you free yourself to invent a new way to reach readers. You must identify the fundamentals of the skill. Every skill has a core loop of input, processing, and output. Every skill has hard constraints, physics, time, human biology, and soft constraints, tradition, style, habit. Your job is to ignore the soft constraints and optimize for the hard ones. The mental toolbox. Once you have stripped a problem down to the studs, you need tools to rebuild it. You cannot just stare at the pile of rubble. This is where mental models come in. Mental models are reusable concepts that help you understand how the world works. They are lenses that clarify complex situations. Instead of memorizing thousands of isolated facts, you memorize a few dozen powerful models that apply across different fields. One such model is inversion. Instead of asking, how do I succeed, you ask, how would I guarantee failure? If you want to be a great learner, ask, how could I ensure I never learn anything? The answers might be, get distracted constantly, never practice, ignore feedback, and give up immediately. Now you have a clear list of things to avoid. By avoiding stupidity, you often stumble into brilliance. Another model is the theory of constraints. In any system, there is one bottleneck that limits the entire output. Improving anything other than the bottleneck is a waste of time. If you are learning to play a song and you can play 90% of it perfectly, but stumble on one chord change, practicing the easy parts is useless. You must focus all your energy on the constraint. By building a library of these models, Pareto principle, opportunity cost, feedback loops, leverage, you sharpen your judgment. You stop guessing and start analyzing. You become a surgeon with a scalpel, cutting through the noise to find the leverage point. The myth of the genius. You might be thinking that this sounds exhausting. You might think that deep thinking is reserved for geniuses like Einstein or Musk, and that you don't have the brain power for it. This is a myth. First principles thinking is not a genetic gift. It is a discipline. It is a habit of pausing before you act. Most people operate on autopilot. They see a problem and immediately reach for the nearest, most obvious solution. First principles thinking just asks you to wait. It asks you to spend 5 minutes questioning the premise before you accept the conclusion. It does not take a high IQ to ask, is this really true? It takes courage. It takes the willingness to look stupid in front of people who are confidently following the herd. Another myth is that you don't have time for this. You just want to get things done. But shallow thinking is the biggest time waster of all. How much time do you waste climbing a ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall? How many hours do you spend executing a strategy that was doomed from the start because it was based on a false assumption? Spending 30 minutes to deconstruct a problem today can save you 30 days of wasted effort next month. It is an investment, not a delay. The 5 whys and the blank sheet. How do you actually practice this? You can start with the 5 whys technique. Pick a problem you are facing or a skill you are stuck on. Write it down. Then ask, why is this happening? Write the answer. Then ask, why is that happening? Do this 5 times. Usually, by the 3rd or 4th why, you will move past the surface excuses, I don't have time, and hit the structural reality. I am prioritizing low-value tasks because they make me feel busy. Once you see the structural reality, you can fix it. Another method is the blank sheet approach. When you are trying to design a solution, whether it is a fitness routine, a study schedule, or a business project, start with a blank sheet of paper. Do not look at what others are doing. Do not look at templates. Write down the goal. Then write down the absolute non-negotiable constraints. Then, using only logic, build a path from the constraints to the goal. Only after you have done this should you look at what the experts say. You will often find that your solution is simpler, cheaper, and more direct than the standard advice because it is tailored to your specific reality, not a generic average. Explaining it to a teenager. A great way to test if you're thinking from first principles is to try to explain the concept to a smart teenager or even a child who knows nothing about the field. Jargon is the enemy of understanding. Jargon is often used to hide the fact that we don't actually know what we are talking about. If you can't explain a concept in plain language, you don't understand the first principles. You are just parroting words. When you strip away the fancy terminology, you are forced to grapple with the actual mechanics of the idea. If you stumble, that is good. It shows you where your understanding is hollow. Go back and dig until you can explain it simply. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. The clear thinker. When you adopt this mindset, you change. You stop being a consumer of information and start being a filter. A good outcome is that you use this occasionally. When you hit a stubborn problem that standard advice can't fix, you stop, break it down, and find a workaround. You become less dependent on gurus. An excellent outcome is that this becomes your default lens. You walk into a meeting or a classroom, and you immediately spot the assumptions everyone else is taking for granted. You ask the question that makes everyone pause. You avoid the traps of groupthink. The best outcome is that you become a creator of new methods. Because you understand the bedrock rules, you can build new structures that others didn't think were possible. You become the person who reinvents the wheel, not because you are ignorant of the old wheel, but because you realized the old wheel was square. The trap of abstraction. There is a danger here. It is possible to get so lost in deep thinking that you never actually do anything. You can spend weeks deconstructing the nature of art and never paint a single stroke. This is analysis paralysis. First principles thinking is a tool for action, not philosophy. You must force yourself to end every thinking session with a concrete next step. The goal is not to have a perfect theory. The goal is to have a better plan. Also, do not overcomplicate simple problems. You do not need first principles to decide how to tie your shoes. Use heuristics, shortcuts, for the small stuff. Save the heavy lifting for the problems that matter, the skills you want to master, the career moves you want to make, the systems you want to build. The collision of worlds. You now have a formidable arsenal. You have a new identity. You have a learning engine. You can deconstruct skills. You can transfer experience. And now you can strip reality down to its bones and rebuild it. You are becoming a sovereign learner. You are no longer dependent on the script. But there is one final frontier. First principles thinking is powerful, but it is often solitary. It digs deep into a single vertical shaft of truth. It tells you what is true about this specific thing. But the greatest breakthroughs in history rarely come from staring at one thing until it makes sense. They come from smashing two completely different things together. They come from taking a truth from biology and applying it to architecture. They come from taking a rhythm from jazz and applying it to writing code. Your brain is not a filing cabinet, it is a network. And the most powerful thing a network can do is connect nodes that were previously isolated. In the next chapter, we are going to leave the bedrock and take flight. We are going to learn how to turn your mind into a collision space where strange, unrelated ideas crash into each other to create things that first principles alone could never predict. We are going to learn the alchemy of the polymath. Chapter 7, Crossfield Thinking. You are sitting in a room filled with filing cabinets. One cabinet is labeled work. Another is labeled hobbies. A third is labeled relationships. When you have a problem at work, you walk over to the work cabinet, open a drawer, and look for a solution. If the answer isn't in that specific drawer, you assume the problem is unsolvable. You stare at the wall, frustrated, while the answer you need is sitting right behind you in the hobbies cabinet, gathering dust. This is how most people organize their minds. We are trained from a young age to compartmentalize. Math happens in math class. History happens in history class. We are taught that these domains are separate islands, separated by vast oceans of irrelevance. We are taught to stay in our lane. But this compartmentalization is a prison for your intelligence. The greatest breakthroughs in human history did not come from staring deeper into a single drawer. They came from dumping the contents of all the cabinets onto the floor and seeing what matched. They came from a biologist looking at architecture to understand structure, or a programmer looking at biology to understand viral growth. In this chapter, we are going to tear down the walls between the rooms in your mind. We are going to turn your brain from a tidy archive into a chaotic, high-energy collision space. We are going to teach you Crossfield thinking. By the end of this chapter, you will no longer be a person who just collects facts. You will be a person who weaves them into a web of original insight. Escaping the echo chamber. The danger of deep specialization is that you eventually run out of new ideas. If you only read books about your industry, you are consuming the exact same raw materials as your competitors. You are swimming in the same pool of concepts, using the same jargon, and arriving at the same best practices. This is the echo chamber. It feels safe because everyone agrees with you, but it is where creativity goes to die. Crossfield thinking is your escape hatch. When you deliberately import a mental model from a completely different domain, say, applying the concept of friction from physics to a user interface design, you instantly differentiate yourself. You are no longer competing on who knows the standard playbook better. You are rewriting the playbook using alien technology. This ability to see patterns where others see noise is the defining trait of the polymath. While the specialist sees a marketing problem, the polymath sees a signaling problem that biology solved millions of years ago with peacock feathers. By spotting these structural similarities, you can predict problems before they happen. You become the person in the room who connects the dots that everyone else thinks are on different pages. Furthermore, this approach makes learning stickier. The brain hates isolated facts. It treats them like junk mail and deletes them. But the brain loves connections. When you link a new abstract concept to an old familiar one, you are anchoring it in your long-term memory. You are building a network, not a pile. The web of knowledge. To make this happen, we need to change the way you capture information. Most people take notes that are linear and dead. They write a list of bullet points from a meeting or a book, file it away, and never look at it again. These notes are graveyards of information. We need to build a knowledge graph. A knowledge graph is a way of organizing ideas that mimics the structure of the brain itself. In your brain, neurons do not sit in alphabetical lists. They sit in a dense web of connections. When one neuron fires, it triggers three others. We want your external notes to do the same thing. You need to start treating your notes as a thinking tool, not just a storage unit. Whether you use a digital app that allows for backlinking or a physical system of index cards, the rule is the same. No note is allowed to exist in isolation. Every time you write down a new idea, you must ask yourself, what does this relate to? And create a link. If you are learning about compound interest in finance, you might link it to habit formation in psychology. If you are learning about structural integrity in engineering, you might link it to team dynamics in management. Over time, these links create a massive, interconnected web. You stop having a finance notebook and a psychology notebook. You just have a knowledge base where ideas from different worlds are constantly touching. The collision protocol. Once you have a system for capturing these connections, you need a protocol for forcing them to happen. You cannot just wait for inspiration to strike while you are in the shower. You have to engineer serendipity. This begins with the collision session. Once a week, you should sit down with your notes, but not to study them. You are there to mix them. You pull up a concept from domain A and a concept from domain B, and you ask, how do these two things interact? It sounds abstract, so let's make it concrete. Let's say you have a note about jazz improvisation and a note about corporate strategy. On the surface, they have nothing to do with each other, but during a collision session, you force them together. You ask, what would a corporate strategy look like if it were built like a jazz solo? Suddenly, you are thinking about structured flexibility. You are thinking about how jazz musicians have a set of agreed-upon rules, the key, the tempo, but total freedom within those rules. You realize that your company is too rigid. It's trying to play classical music in a jazz market. You have just generated a novel insight by smashing two rocks together. This practice transforms you from a passive learner into an active alchemist. You are constantly looking for the idea seeds that emerge from these collisions. Most of them will be nonsense. That is fine. You only need one or two good hybrids to change the trajectory of a project or a career. The power of like. The primary tool for this kind of thinking is the analogy. An analogy is a bridge that lets you walk from the known to the unknown. It is the cognitive act of saying, this new thing is like that old thing. You need to train yourself to ask, what is this like, every time you encounter a new problem. If you are stuck on a coding bug, ask, how is this bug like a plumbing leak? Maybe you need to shut off the water, data, before you fix the pipe function. If you are trying to manage a difficult team, ask, how is this team like a garden? Maybe you are overwatering, micromanaging, or maybe the soil culture is toxic. You should practice analogy drills. Take a current problem you are facing and force yourself to generate 3 distinct analogies from 3 different fields: sports, movies, and nature. My failing marketing campaign is like 1. A football team that can't pass the ball, sports. 2. A movie with a great trailer but a boring plot, movies. 3. A plant that is getting sun but no water, nature. Each analogy reveals a different aspect of the problem. The football analogy suggests a coordination issue. The movie analogy suggests a product-market fit issue. The plant analogy suggests a resource issue. By viewing the problem through these different lenses, you escape your own blind spots. You translate complex, muddy situations into simple, vivid images that clarify the solution. The myth of the scattered mind. There is a persistent myth that if you have too many interests, you are scattered or unfocused. People will tell you to stop dabbling and get serious. They will tell you that reading about architecture when you are a software engineer is a waste of time. This is the specialist's defense mechanism. They are trying to pull you back into the crab bucket. The truth is that long-term high-level roles actually demand crossfield thinking. A CEO does not need to be the best accountant in the room. They need to understand how accounting impacts marketing, how marketing impacts engineering, and how engineering impacts legal. They need to see the whole board. You must replace the mandate to stay in your lane with a new directive. Master a lane, then cross the lanes intelligently. You are not flitting from flower to flower like a distracted butterfly. You are a bee, cross-pollinating the garden. You are taking nectar from one area and using it to fertilize another. Do not let anyone convince you that your diverse interests are a distraction. They are your competitive advantage. They are the reason you will see the solution that the person who has been staring at the same spreadsheet for 20 years will miss. Visualizing the invisible. To get really good at this, you need to get visual. Our brains are wired for spatial processing. We understand maps better than we understand lists. When you are struggling to connect ideas, draw a map. Put your central problem in the middle of a page, then draw circles around it representing different domains you know about. Draw lines. Use arrows. If you are trying to design a better onboarding process for new employees, draw a line to video games. How do games onboard players? They have a tutorial level. They give small rewards early on. They don't unlock the hardest boss until you have mastered the basics. Now, draw a line to airports. How do airports move people? They use clear signage. They have distinct zones. By externalizing these connections on paper, you free up your working memory. You can see the clusters of ideas forming. You can spot the gaps. You can refer back to these maps months later and find that your subconscious has filled in the missing pieces. The trap of the collector. There is a specific way this can go wrong, and I need to warn you about it. It is called the collector's fallacy. It is very easy to get addicted to the feeling of capturing information. You can spend hours building the perfect knowledge graph, tagging every note, color-coding every link, and feeling like a genius. But if you never use those notes to create anything, you are just a digital hoarder. A knowledge graph is not a museum, it is a factory. The point is not to have a beautiful web of thoughts. The point is to produce output. You must be vigilant about note overload. If your system becomes so complex that you dread opening it, it has failed. Simplify. Keep only the tags that actually help you think. Delete the rest. And most importantly, require that every collision session ends with an action. You cannot just say, "Wow, that's a cool connection." You must ask, "What can I build with this?" If you connect jazz and strategy, write a one-page memo on the jazz strategy and send it to a friend. If you connect biology and marketing, sketch a diagram of viral marketing as a contagion. You must turn the spark into a fire, or it will fade away. The signature mind. When you master Crossfield thinking, you achieve something rare, a signature way of thinking. Most people are interchangeable. If you hire a standard accountant, you get standard accounting. If you hire a standard designer, you get standard design. But when you hire a polymath who thinks across fields, you get something that cannot be commoditized. You become the person who brings fresh, unexpected angles to every discussion. You design products that feel unique because they are hybrids of disparate influences. Your work carries a fingerprint that is impossible to fake because it is born from the specific, unique intersection of your interests. You have built a powerful machine. You have the identity of a learner. You have the engine to master new skills. You have the tools to deconstruct them, the power to transfer them, the logic to strip them to the bone, and the creativity to mix them into something new. You are sitting on a gold mine of potential. Your mind is buzzing with connections and capabilities. You are ready. But there is a final, fatal trap waiting for you. You can have the most sophisticated mental operating system in the world. You can have a knowledge graph that rivals the Library of Alexandria. You can have the ability to learn anything in record time, and you can still end up with absolutely nothing to show for it. You can be the smartest person in the room who never actually ships anything. All of this preparation, all of this thinking, all of this learning, it is all happening inside your head. And the world does not care what is inside your head. The world only cares what you put into it. In the next chapter, we are going to flip the switch. We are going to stop preparing and start producing. We are going to learn why the only way to truly learn is to leave the safety of the classroom and build something real, something messy, and something public. Chapter 8, Output First. You are currently in the most dangerous phase of your journey. You have read 7 chapters of this book. You have dismantled your old identity, built a learning engine, deconstructed skills, and learned to think from first principles. You likely feel smarter. You feel capable. You feel ready. And that is exactly the problem. The feeling of readiness is a narcotic. It sedates your anxiety without actually solving your problem. You can spend years feeling ready, reading books, watching tutorials, and buying equipment without ever producing a single tangible result. You are building a library in your mind, but the shelves in the real world are empty. This chapter is the pivot point. Up until now, everything we have discussed has been internal. It has been about how you think, how you plan, and how you analyze. Now we're going to flip the script. We're going to turn you inside out. We are moving from a culture of consumption to a culture of creation. The strategy is simple but terrifying. Stop learning to build and start building to learn. This is the output first principle. It is the difference between the person who knows the theory of swimming and the person who is wet. The safety of the sidelines. There is a reason you prefer to study rather than do. Studying is safe. When you are reading a textbook or watching a masterclass, you cannot fail. You cannot be judged. You are in a controlled environment where the answers are in the back of the book. But the moment you try to create something, a line of code, a sketch, a conversation in a new language, you enter the chaos of reality. Reality does not care about your intentions. It only cares about your output. Your code either runs or it breaks. Your sentence is either understood or it is met with a blank stare. This immediate feedback is painful, so you retreat to the safety of preparation. You tell yourself you need just one more course, just one more week of research. You hide behind the mask of the conscientious student to avoid the risk of the clumsy beginner. But here's the hard truth. Action is the only honest test of understanding. You can nod your head at a concept in a book, but until you can use that concept to solve a problem in the real world, you do not know it. You only recognize it. There is a massive gap between recognition and competence, and the only bridge across that gap is output. The feedback loop of reality. When you shift to an output-first mindset, you stop guessing and start calibrating. Imagine you are learning to write comedy. You can read every book on joke structure in existence. You can analyze the greats. You can feel like you understand the mechanics of a punchline perfectly. But until you stand in front of a room of people and tell a joke, you have zero data. The silence of a room that doesn't laugh teaches you more about timing in 3 seconds than 3 years of theory ever could. This is why we prioritize output. We want the data. We want reality to tell us where we suck so we can fix it. When you keep your learning inside your head, you are operating on assumptions. When you push your learning out into the world, you are operating on facts. This feedback loop accelerates your growth. The learner who writes one bad song a week and plays it for friends will lap the learner who spends a year trying to write one perfect symphony in isolation. The first learner is adjusting based on real-world acoustics. The second is hallucinating perfection. The art of the tiny project. So how do you do this without crashing and burning? You do not try to build a skyscraper on day one. You build a birdhouse. You need to design tiny projects. These are small, contained outputs that force you to use the skill you are learning. They must be small enough to finish in a week or two, but big enough to feel real. If you are learning data science, do not try to build a complex machine learning model for a massive corporation. Find a small, interesting data set, maybe your own spending habits or local weather patterns, and build a simple visualization. If you are learning a language, do not try to write a novel. Write a 3-paragraph story about your day. The goal of the tiny project is not to change the world. The goal is to finish. There is a specific chemical rush that comes from shipping a project. It changes your identity. You stop being someone who is learning to code and become someone who built a script. Even if the script is useless, the identity shift is priceless. These projects become artifacts. They are proof of life. When you look back after a year, you will not just have memories of studying, you will have a portfolio of work. You will have evidence that you are growing. The teacher's hack. There is another form of output that is just as powerful as building: teaching. You do not need to be a professor to teach. You just need to be one step ahead of the person you are helping. In fact, beginners are often better at explaining things to other beginners than experts are. Experts have forgotten what it feels like to be confused. They skip steps because the knowledge is automatic for them. You, the struggle bus beginner, know exactly where the potholes are. Use teaching as testing. If you think you understand a concept, try to explain it to a friend or write a simple blog post about it. You will immediately discover your blind spots. You will find yourself saying, "And then it works because, That is gold. That is the hole in your knowledge. You didn't know it was there until you tried to generate output. Now you can go back to your study materials with a laser focus, looking specifically for the answer to that Reframing sharing as learning out loud removes the pressure to be a guru. You are not claiming to be the authority. You are simply documenting your exploration. You are saying, "Here is what I learned today, and here is how I think it works." This invites connection rather than judgment. The myth of ready. We must address the biggest lie you tell yourself: "I'll do it when I'm ready." Ready is not a state you arrive at. Ready is a decision you make. You will never feel fully ready to launch a project, give a speech, or publish your work. There will always be a flaw. There will always be something you could have improved. If you wait for the feeling of readiness, you will wait forever. The polymath creates before they are ready. They understand that readiness is built by doing, not by thinking about doing. Replace the phrase, "I'll do it later," with, "What is the smallest version I can do now?" If you are afraid to give a speech, give a toast at a dinner. If you are afraid to launch a business, sell one item to one person. Lower the stakes until the fear becomes manageable, then ship. The habit of shipping. To make this sustainable, you need to build a rhythm. You need to become a shipping machine. Set a deadline, a real one. I will post my analysis by Friday at 5 p.m. Tell someone. The social pressure will force you to focus. Use done lists instead of just to-do lists. A to-do list is a monument to what you haven't achieved yet. It can be demoralizing. A done list is a trophy case. It tracks what you have actually shipped. Wrote the code, filmed the video, had the conversation. When you look at your done list, you get a hit of dopamine. You see visible evidence of your output. This feeds your motivation to keep going. Make a rule for yourself: no consuming without producing. For every hour you spend watching tutorials or reading books, you must spend an hour creating something. It doesn't have to be public, but it has to be external. Summarize the chapter. Write a snippet of code. Sketch the diagram. This ratio ensures that you never fall back into the passive consumer spiral. It forces you to digest and use every piece of information you take in. The perfectionism virus. The enemy of output is perfectionism. Perfectionism looks like high standards, but it is actually fear in a tuxedo. It is the fear of being seen as imperfect. You must lower the stakes, not the standards. Keep your projects small so that failure is cheap. If you spend 6 months on a project and it fails, you are devastated. If you spend 3 days on a project and it fails, you learned a lesson. Remind yourself that quality is a function of quantity. The pottery students who were graded on the weight of the pots they made, quantity, ended up making better pots than the students who were graded on the perfection of a single pot. Why? Because the quantity group made hundreds of mistakes and learned from them, while the perfection group sat around theorizing about the perfect pot and never got their hands dirty. You need to make bad pots. You need to write bad code. You need to speak broken Spanish. That is the only path to the good stuff. The shift in identity. When you commit to output first, something profound happens to your identity. You stop seeking permission. Most people go through life waiting for someone to pick them. They wait to be hired, wait to be promoted, wait to be discovered. They view their skills as lines on a resume, hoping someone else will validate them. But when you are constantly shipping projects, you validate yourself. You don't need to tell people you are a designer. You show them your portfolio. You don't need to tell people you are a strategist. You send them your case studies. You become the person who does. In a world of talkers, the doer is king. Opportunities start to find you because your work is out there acting as a beacon. You attract other builders. You attract collaborators. You attract luck. You have now turned your learning engine into a production engine. You are no longer just absorbing the world. You are adding to it. The infinite game. You have reached a point of high competence. You have the mindset, the methods, and the output. You are effectively a polymath in training. But there is one final challenge. It is the challenge of time. Everything we have discussed so far can be exciting in the short term. It is thrilling to start a new skill, to have those first breakthroughs, to ship that first project. But what happens when the novelty wears off? What happens when life gets complicated? What happens 3 years from now or 10 years from now? How do you sustain this intensity without burning out? How do you weave these disparate skills into a life that makes sense rather than just a collection of interesting hobbies? We need to zoom out. We need to stop looking at the next week and start looking at the next decade. We need to understand how these skills compound, not just in your career, but in your character. In the final chapter, we're going to look at the long horizon. We're going to talk about the lifelong ascent. We're going to answer the question, where does this path actually lead? Chapter 9, Lifelong Ascent. You have reached the end of the manual, but you are only at the beginning of the climb. Throughout this book, we have treated skills as problems to be solved, codes to be broken, and mountains to be conquered. But if you stop there, you miss the point. The goal of the Polymath Code is not just to acquire a collection of merit badges to pin on your resume. The goal is to fundamentally alter the trajectory of your life. When you look at a graph of compound interest, there is a long, flat period where nothing seems to happen. Then suddenly, the line curves upward and goes vertical. Most people quit during the flat period. They learn a little bit of French, try coding for a weekend, paint one canvas, and then stop because they don't see the payoff. This chapter is about the vertical line. It is about what happens when you stop treating learning as a phase and start treating it as a lifestyle. We're going to talk about the lifelong ascent. This is the state where the friction disappears, where learning becomes as natural as breathing, and where the compound effect of your skills creates a life that is currently impossible for you to imagine. The code is now live. Take a moment to look at the operating system we have installed in your mind over the last 8 chapters. It is a complete architecture. You started by destroying the single-lane identity that told you to stay in your box. You replaced it with the identity of a builder, someone who runs toward confusion rather than away from it. You installed a meta-learning engine so you never have to wander blindly into a new field again. You learned to deconstruct massive skills into tiny, non-threatening micro-skills. You unlocked transfer power, realizing that your past is a goldmine of patterns you can reuse. You learned to strip reality down to first principles, freeing yourself from the fragility of copying others. You turned your brain into a collision space with Crossfield thinking, generating ideas that specialists miss. And finally, you committed to output first, understanding that you only truly know what you can build. This is not just a list of tips. It is a loop. It is a recurring algorithm. The first time you run this code, it will feel clunky. You will hesitate. You will doubt. But the second time, it will be faster. The 10th time, it will be automatic. Eventually, you won't even think about using the Polymath Code. You will just look at a new challenge, a new software, a new market, a new instrument, and your brain will instantly map it, strip it, and attack it. That is when the magic happens. The unfragile life. The immediate benefit of living this way is control. We live in an era of terrifying volatility. Industries are being wiped out by artificial intelligence. Job descriptions that existed for 50 years are vanishing overnight. The specialist is terrified because they have bet everything on one stock, and that stock is crashing. But you are diversified, you are unfragile. When you master the art of learning, you stop feeling at the mercy of trends. If your industry pivots, you pivot faster. If a new tool emerges, you master it while others are still complaining about it. You replace the anxiety of, what if I lose my job, with the curiosity of, what will I build next? You become the person who figures it out. This is the most valuable reputation you can have in the modern economy. When a crisis hits a company or a community, people don't look to the person with the fanciest degree. They look to the person who can stare into the chaos and find a path. By consistently turning confusion into clarity, you earn a level of trust that no title can buy. You stop saying, I don't know, and start saying, I'll learn it and get back to you by Friday. The ripple effect on relationships. One of the most surprising side effects of the Polymath Code is what it does to your social life. We often think of learning as a solitary act, the scholar alone in the library. But a polymath is the ultimate connector. When you understand the structure of skills, you become a better listener. When a friend talks about their struggles with gardening, or coding, or management, you don't just nod politely, you hear the underlying patterns. You can offer a mental model from a completely different field that unlocks their problem. You become a teacher, not by lecturing, but by translating. You bring more value to every circle you enter. Because you speak the languages of multiple domains, you can bridge the gap between the engineer and the marketer, or the artist and the accountant. You become the translator in a world of siloed tribes. And perhaps most importantly, you attract other growers. When you are constantly shipping small projects and exploring new ideas, you repel the cynics and the complainers. You signal to the world that you are playing a different game. You will find yourself surrounded by people who want to build, learn, and expand. Your relationships shift from being based on shared history to being based on shared growth. The view from the future. Let's talk about what you can achieve now that was impossible before. The paralysis is gone. You can now start new skills without the crippling weight of overthinking. You know that you don't need to marry a skill, you just need to date it for a sprint. You treat new interests as low-risk experiments. If you want to learn archery, you don't spend a month researching bows. You do a 1-hour scan, rent a bow, and shoot an arrow. You can design and execute projects that actually finish. You know how to break a vague dream into micro-skills and targeted drills. You know that a messy prototype today is worth more than a perfect idea next year. You have a portfolio that is growing, not just a head full of dreams. And over time, you build a skill stack that is uniquely yours. You are no longer trying to fit into a job description written by someone else. You are carving out a niche that only you can fill. You are the data scientist who understands storytelling. You are the teacher who understands user interface design. You are a category of one. The physics of ease. Here is the secret that I have saved for the end. It gets easier. There is a compounding effect to meta-learning. Every time you learn a new skill, you are refining your learning engine. You get better at spotting your own bottlenecks. You waste less time on bad resources. You recognize patterns faster. This leads to reduced friction. Right now, sitting down to practice might feel like a battle of willpower. But as your identity solidifies, the resistance drops. You don't have to force yourself to practice because you are a learner. It is just what you do. You enter states of deep work and flow more quickly because your brain knows the ritual. And finally, you get bigger results from smaller inputs. This is the leverage of the polymath. Because you have a rich library of mental models and crossfield connections, a single hour of your time produces more insight than 10 hours of a specialist's time. You can solve problems in 5 minutes that take others 5 weeks because you have seen the solution before in a different disguise. The first step of the rest of your life. So what now? Do not close this book and say, "That was interesting." If you do that, you have failed. You have just consumed more content. You have fed the passive spiral. You must take action immediately. Not tomorrow, not Monday, now. First, choose one skill. Stop shopping. Stop worrying about the perfect choice. Pick the one skill that has been nagging at you, the one that would make your life cooler or easier in the next 6 months. Second, run your first mini plan. Do not spend a week on this. Spend 1 hour, do a field scan, break the skill down into 5 micro skills, design one simple practice loop, and choose one tiny project that you will ship in 14 days. Third, declare your path. Write your Polymath declaration. I am a builder of skills. I am becoming the person who, put it on your wall, tell one person, make it real. The line in the sand. You are not late. I know you might be looking at your age and thinking you should have started this 10 years ago. Let that go. That creates nothing but shame, and shame is a terrible fuel for learning. You are exactly where you need to be. Today is the origin point. Today is the day you draw a line in the sand. On one side of the line is the old you, the one who waited for permission, the one who was defined by a label, the one who watched others live the life they wanted. On the other side of the line is the new you, the builder, the experimenter, the one who knows that talent is a myth and that skills are just code waiting to be written. Imagine yourself a year from now. That version of you has shipped a dozen small projects. They have added 2 or 3 real skills to their stack. They walk into rooms with a quiet confidence because they know they can handle whatever the world throws at them. They are grateful that you didn't close this book and do nothing. They are grateful that you started. The door is unlocked. The code is in your hands. Walk through. Epilogue, the infinite game. You might expect a final goodbye here, a neat little bow to wrap up the package, but the Polymath Code doesn't have an ending. That is the point. There is no graduation day. There is no moment where you receive a certificate that says you are now a master. If you are looking for a finish line, you are playing the wrong game. Finite games are played to be won. Infinite games are played to keep playing. The pursuit of skills is an infinite game. The joy is not in the mastery of the skill, but in the expansion of the self. Every time you learn something new, the horizon moves further away. You realize there is more to see, more to connect, more to build. This should not exhaust you. It should thrill you. It means you will never be bored again. It means that as long as you are breathing, you are ascending. Go build something.